Asking a girl out for the first time on Valentine's Day can sometimes be a gamble. Should I ask her to go out sometime before Valentine's Day first? Is asking someone out for a first date on Valentine's Day too presumptuous? Should Valentine's Day be reserved for couples who've already reached a certain point in their relationship? And if V-Day is reserved for pre-existing relationships, would she reject my Valentine's Day invitation despite her willingness to say yes on any other day? Also, will that permanently seal me under the category of friend? I wrestled with this idea for 24 full hours before finally deciding to say, screw it, what have I got to lose other than my dignity? And so, with my newfound bravery, I decided to text her. Very brave of me, right? It went something like this. What are you doing? Nothing. You? Trying to make a decision. A decision about what? Where we should go this Friday. Are you asking me out for Valentine's Day? Maybe. Where would you take me? It's a surprise. Are you saying yes? Maybe. Little did she know, it wasn't just going to be a surprise for her. In reality, I had no idea where I was going to take her. But that little chocolate-covered lie bought me a bit of time to find a place to go. I started Googling Valentine's Day events in town. I came up with the usual restaurants inviting couples for their special V-Day dinners, dance club parties, etc. Then I saw something that stuck out. An event for a Valentine's Day festival on a meetup group website. That's different, I thought. I've never heard of a festival for V-Day. It says they'll have food, drink, dancing, and entertainment of many types. I decided that this was the winner and signed us up with their RSVP form. That Friday came quickly. I picked her up around 7 and we drove out to the event, which was a bit outside of town. It was about a 45-minute drive, past a lot of fields and barren areas. When we finally reached the destination on Google Maps, I saw a sign hung at the corner of a small turnoff that read, Valentine's Day Festival, with an arrow pointing down the dirt drive. We pulled in, and after a few seconds of nothing but trees and brush, we saw some other vehicles parked in an improvised parking lot fashion on the lawn. This brought a sigh of relief, as I really didn't want to look like a complete idiot in front of her on our first date, especially with it being Valentine's Day. We parked, got out. I took her arm in arm as we walked towards what looked like a large outdoor party, with lots of lanterns and merry-sounding noise. This was definitely the place. I looked at her and noticed a smile. This looks like fun, she said. I smiled when I saw that she was happy with my decision. We eventually came to a front gate, where a woman dressed in period clothing asked to see our RSVPs. I showed her on my phone and she checked off our names on a sheet. We continued inward. To put it lightly, this place was beautiful. There were coloured lantern lights everywhere, soft white string lights defining sections and walkways. An incredible food spread, which was as of yet untouched. People dancing, singing, and even some old men dressed in religious wear who seemed to be just as into it as everyone else. Most of them were dressed in the same period clothing as the woman who checked our RSVPs at the gate, and it was all set up in a field with beautiful flowers and greenery all around us. It looked perfect. I was proud of myself for making this decision. She would definitely be impressed. A minute later, we were approached by an older woman who looked happy to see us. Hello, you must be our guests, she said with a smile. We are definitely 2 of them, I said. She laughed. Come with me, we'll get you all set up for the festival. It starts shortly. Okay, I said, looking at my date. We smiled at each other and started following the woman. She led us to an area with some small wooden booths. I wasn't sure if these were outhouses, phone booths, or what. She said, you take one on the left, she can take the one on the right. Inside you'll find clothing to change into. We have to change clothing? I asked. Yes, for the aesthetic of the festival. You're both going to look so cute. I looked at my date, gave her half a smirk, with a shoulder shrug, and she did the same back. We entered our booths. I felt kind of silly wearing this costume clothing, but I was going to play along if everybody else was. I exited the booth. She was still in hers. A couple of minutes later, she opened the door and stepped out slowly, wearing a stunning dress of many colours. She looked like a princess. I think she could tell by my widened eyes that I liked it. See something you like? She asked. I chuckled. Absolutely. The woman looked at us both with a satisfied smile. You both look splendid. We'll keep your clothing in bags for you. Come along. We followed her. She led us to an area with several tables of food and drink and told us to make ourselves at home. We grabbed some small plates of hors d'oeuvres, along with some wine. We talked and ate. How did you find this place? She asked. I found it online. Do you like it? Of course I do. It's wonderful. After finishing our food, we refilled our wine and headed out to an area where there were people laughing and dancing to music played by a small group of musicians with stringed instruments. I asked her to dance, and we danced, and laughed, and even kissed. A little while later, everybody started moving to another location, so we followed. We came to an area with a large platform, like a stage, with 2 chairs in the middle. The stage was decorated with flowers of red, yellow, and orange. Shortly after, a few of those old men in religious garb walked up the stairs on the side of the stage, bringing a couple of guests with them, and directing them to sit in the chairs. I couldn't wait to see what they were about to do. After the guests in the chairs, a male and a female, were seated. The woman who had given us our festival clothing approached the stage, then turned to address the crowd. As we are here to honour the great Romulus and Remus, creators of Rome, the festival has now begun. Everyone began cheering. Who? I whispered to my date. Shh, she said. Bring her in, said the woman. A large carriage was being pulled by several men towards the stage. When they got closer and people were out of the way, I noticed that there was some sort of animal inside. A very large animal. When the carriage reached the front of the stage, it became clear to me that this was some sort of wolf-like creature. I was getting pretty uneasy by this point. The woman turned towards the guests on the stage. For this part, you'll be the goat, she said, pointing at the man. He laughed. She then turned to the woman and said, and you will be the dog. She looked confused and insulted by this statement. The male said, what? The woman assured him, don't worry, it's part of the celebration. And he seemed to calm down, but still looked annoyed. I looked at my date and whispered, this is getting weird. He replied, yeah. Both guests were starting to look woozy, like they were about to pass out. The female guest's wine goblet fell to the floor with a loud clanking sound as she slumped over. The male looked over at her, frightened and angry. What are you doing? He exclaimed, then looking at his own wine goblet just before passing out. The old men in religious garb started strapping them both into their chairs. I shouted, what the hell is going on here? As my date grabbed my arm. The woman placed her hand on my arm, saying, it's okay, this is normal. I looked at her with confusion. The wolf-like creature in the carriage cage was getting upset by my outburst and was growling toward me. Back on the stage, the old men in religious garb started stripping their clothes off until they were completely naked. Oh, what the hell is this? I exclaimed. 2 of the naked old men picked up large knives and walked in front of the couple in the chairs. Before I even knew what was happening, the old religious men thrust the knives into the couple's chests, simultaneously pulled them out, turned toward the crowd, and wiped the bloody blades across their foreheads. They then started laughing, and the crowd cheered. Oh my god, I exclaimed, grabbing my date's arm. We have to get out of here. She looked at me in horror, with tears coming from her eyes. Don't be frightened, said the woman. This is all part of the celebration. The wolf creature was getting angrier and louder, still looking in my direction. I screamed, let's go, at my date. At this point, the woman shouted, let her out, as several men started opening the cage door to let the wolf free. We ran, hand in hand, back in the direction that we came from. I ploughed through the people as we ran back toward the entrance gate. We got through the gate and I slammed it shut. We continued running toward the parking lot. The funny part is, when I looked back, nobody was chasing after us. It was like they didn't think there was anything wrong. When we got to the car, I first unlocked her door to make sure she was safe inside, then unlocked mine and I jumped in. And unlike every horror movie I've ever seen, the car started on the first try. We sped away, leaving a dirt cloud in our wake. After a couple of minutes, I finally glanced over and my date was looking tired. She was passing out. Oh no, I thought. We drank the wine. A few minutes later, I started to feel like I was about to pass out. Then I decided that we had a better chance of making it if I pulled over than if I passed out and crashed. So I pulled over and called 911. At least, I think I did. I don't remember hanging up. I don't even remember talking to them. All I remember is being awoken by the police busting out my window. Emergency services were on the scene and pulled us both out of the car, loading us into the back of an ambulance. That's the last thing I remember before the next day. When we woke in a hospital the next morning, I learned that our stomachs had been pumped as a preventative measure, as they didn't know what was in the wine that we drank. They had us on IVs all night to keep us hydrated. I told the police all about the festival, the murders, everything. I even gave them the address of the event that I punched into Google Maps the prior evening. Later that day, I received a call from them saying that they checked the address, but there was nothing there. I told them, I know it's in the middle of nowhere, but it was down a dirt side drive to the left, right by where Google said the address should be. You have to go through the drive and everything is back there in the field. The officer hesitated for a few seconds, then replied, We did see the side drive, and we did go through it. There's nothing back there. No people, no lights, no stages, no garbage left behind, nothing. We spent over an hour looking. There's just nothing there. I then grabbed my phone to bring up the festival group on the meetup website. As you guessed it, gone. Before I continue with the final story, if you've enjoyed this video so far, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to see future content from me, as well as help me in the algorithm. Thank you. My name is John, and I have to apologize before starting. This story is very hard to track and recall chronologically. Time usually moves slowly for me, but not that day, the day I met her. 6th of February 2014. This was the day I went on a trip to the EMP in Seattle. Accompanying me, I had around 15 classmates. Only a handful were male, as was I. Even the teachers were female, so naturally, I felt a bit out of my realm. I don't socialise with girls often, unless a trait or mannerism piques my curiosity. Throughout the day, there was one girl who continued to migrate towards me and comment on things. Her name was Destiny. After a while, it was fairly obvious that she was interested in me romantically. She would appear soon after everyone had moved on, and she would say something relevant while gently touching my shoulder. We would eventually move on to the African section of the SAM. And again, she appeared out of the corner of my eye. She said what I was thinking, with a powerfully articulate tongue. These masks scare me deeply. I started to pay attention to her. She was wearing a red plaid coat that hung to her sides. From a glance, she really didn't have many different characteristics from our age group, aside from her eyes. Her eyes were a painted blue, but her pupils were colossally dilated. She had dark, running hair that seemed to reach up from her shoulders. Her height matched mine, and she was fairly lean. She stuck close the rest of the trip, still commented, but said nothing as shocking as before. 9th of February 2014. I received a friend notification on Facebook this day. I don't frequent the ever awkward social site often, so this seemed spontaneous. She found me on there, even though she never knew my name. I thought nothing of it at the time, but then again, we knew most of the same people. We talked for a while, and the anomaly kept reoccurring. She said what I thought. It was sharp and exciting, and I finally found the girl of my dreams. 11th of February 2014. We arranged a small date for this day, just for coffee. She let me see her iPod, and it was miraculous. She had literally every single artist on it that I did. I have a strange music type, but it was all there as far as I could tell. This made me feel euphoric. 13th of February 2014. This day is where I usually lose track. I can't recall the events clearly, for they happened at such a fast pace. We kissed on this day. It was the third date. and I was invited in at the end. I didn't expect much, since my luck showed absolutely no signs of improving much more. Her apartment was down the street from mine. Her walls and rooms were bare, suggesting poverty. I asked about the naked apartment, and she mentioned her recent move to my town. I thought nothing of it. We sat on her floor, in her bedroom. The television had no stand, so sitting on the bed would have blocked our view. Then we were drinking coffee, or maybe it was tea, and her dog, or cat, spilled one of the drinks. I stood up startled and said, "Oh shit." The very moment I said it, so did she. A glance was shared, mostly of embarrassment, and she ran into the kitchen to grab paper towels. I felt out of place, and turned inward with a bit of shame for making a mess. She started to hum a tune my grandmother used to hum when she cleans. I finally collected myself and assisted in cleaning up the horrid mess. She either went to the living room next, or maybe a closet. I really can't recall. My brain gets fuzzy and warm when I try to work all of this out, but we ended up in her bedroom, and passion overthrew shyness. Her body was soft. She had moles on her arm that were very adorable. She had a scar down her stomach that was very light and faded. She had a burn mark on her leg that looked like a birthmark. 14th of February, 2014, Valentine's Day. She called me on the phone, saying she was frightened and needed me. I didn't collect my usual things, my phone, my lighter, my wallet. I was fast-paced and arrived a few minutes after the call took place. She was nowhere to be found. I called out for her. "Joan!" I emitted fear and danger with every letter of the name. "Joan!" I cried into the dank room. I was petrified. What if she had been kidnapped? What if something terrible was waiting for me in the other room? Like a crime scene of bloody proportion. Breathing hard, I raced into every room. Then something hit me. A quite strange thought, in fact. All of the furniture was gone. I must have missed it before, but now that I think back, there was dust on everything. It looked as if this apartment had been abandoned for some time, apart from my own footprints. My leg hurt from a previous injury. I checked the bedroom. Nothing. I checked the next room. Nothing. I checked the kitchen. Nothing. The only room left was the bathroom. The door was closed. I'm out of breath at this point, so I take my time. This is it. This is either everything or nothing. My shoes echo off of the empty corners into oblivion. My hand reaches the knob, slowly kinking back into the mechanism, and the door moans wide open. I found only one object in there. It was a mirror. I don't like mirrors. I hate mirrors, actually. I can see the hideous moles on my arm so clearly in my reflection, and I feel repulsed. I can see the cut I got on my stomach from when I was a child too. Can you believe that? The worst thing about mirrors, I can see my pupils when I forget to take my medication. They get so redundantly large and bothered. When I forget to take my medication, I get confused. When I forget, I hurt people. I forget everything I am. My name is Joan, and I have to apologize before starting. This is the story of how I found my neighbor dead in an empty apartment.